Thank you, friends. Shabbat Shalom. Greetings to you all. Happy Valentine's Day, or the non-Jewish 15th of Av, to all you lovers out there. And that is, of course, all of you. Because I believe the 613 laws of the Torah can be distilled down to one: love. If I fell in love with you, would you promise to be true and help me understand? Love and understanding, they go hand in hand. There's something magical about love, my friends. It makes us feel great. It makes us happy, fulfilled, and capable of taking on the world and all that it offers. And it is something we can never get enough of or give enough of. Unfortunately for many, it seems to be just out of reach. So friends, go for it. Go do it. Got to go through that door. There's no easy way out at all. Still, it only takes time till love comes to everyone. Thank you, George. Do you feel the love we have just seen and been awed by the Lord? And he spoke to you and you alone. You have been embraced by God. How can you not feel love? Ooh, I need your love, babe. Guess you know it's true. Hope you need my love, babe, just like I need you. Now, on another note, I know Tu B'Shvat is coming up on February 22nd next week, which means this is the end of a Hebrew month, and next week will be a new moon, a Rosh Chodesh. And Tu B'Shvat is a very interesting day, and one for which they now have specific Tu B'Shvat Seders that you can hold. Now, I think it's a great way to pick a day to honor the earth, but nowhere in the Torah, my friends, is there actually a new year for trees. It's one of 4 New Years, which was a rabbinic decision in order to reconcile the fact that Rosh Hashanah, the nameless holy day on the first day of the 7th month in the Torah, became the calendar New Year. So for those of you who want to think of it as the new year of the trees, do not let anyone tell you that it is not. But I know a lot of purists out there do not think so. And so I encourage them not to ignore it. Instead, feel free to think of it as a kind of groundhog or Arbor Day and plant and celebrate trees. Trees cool the streets and cities, conserve energy, save water. They prevent soil erosion, provide food and shelter, help heal us and the planet. They mark the seasons, they clean the air. How do you not love trees? Stars shining bright above you, night breezes seem to whisper, I love you. Birds singing in the sycamore tree. Dream a little dream of me. We have just experienced the epiphany of Judaism, my friends. The meeting of heaven and earth, an event never seen before and never seen since, and it is immediately followed by a rigid, formal outline of laws. Not only is the waiting over, but for many, the party is over, and we are into legal code now. In fact, over 50 of the 613 rules of the Torah are in this one parsha. Exodus 21:1. These are the judgments that you shall set. What a word. Friends, this is mishpatim, judgments. These 3 chapters, Exodus 21 to 23, are a corpus of law known as the Covenant Code, and they are believed to have been deposited with the tablets in the Great Ark. It is a series of what appear to be quite black and white statutes. When the truth is found to be lies and all the joy within you dies, don't you want somebody to love? Don't you need somebody to love? Wouldn't you love somebody to love? You better find somebody to love. By the time you finish going through these rules and regulations, you, my friends, will simply want somebody to love. And somehow, all of these rules and orders do not quite fit with a day dedicated to love. Especially when you see how this parsha begins. We go from the Decalogue, 10 incredible rules, both on a practical basis and on an amazing psycho-spiritual basis on how to live life, to laws about slavery and cruelty. Although with the 50 Shades of Grey opening this weekend, I guess you can have love and cruelty go hand in hand. It begins right away about what the rules are if you buy a Hebrew slave, eved evri. Both words have the same root, my friends, and it is a little different if you buy a non-Hebrew slave. Okay, we will talk a little bit about that later because it brings the whole concept of the Sabbath and the Sabbath year into the picture, something applicable to land and to people. The Sabbath, the ceasing, the sacred time of God. Now, over the years, I've wondered, why would the most important nexus between celestial and terrestrial realms, which begins, as will most pronouncements, with the statement, it is from the God who freed the people from slavery, be immediately followed by rules about owning slaves? Now again, from a reality point of view, think about the transition as we tend to see it. A nation of slaves has been freed and traveling for 3 months. They have reached the mountain of God where they will spend a year, where they have just met God and heard the 10 words, Aseret HaDebarim, themselves. They've seen the lightning, the fire, heard the thunder and celestial horns. Are they really going to lay out a series of laws and codes? And it's the first thing they're going to talk about, purchasing slaves. Remember, this is not a history and should not be taken as one because it does not make chronological sense and you cannot try and force it to. The overriding issue for many is slavery. Why is a nation of slaves putting rules in place about their purchase of slaves? Why would a nation of slaves believe it is okay to own slaves? Why is a nation told there is to be one law for citizen and alien because they were once aliens? But they're told to treat citizen slaves differently than alien ones. Friends, we are busily projecting backwards our moral view of things. A Hebrew during the biblical era could not become a slave unless by order of a court or by putting himself into servitude. Remember, what is clearly involved is not chattel slavery, but what amounts to a kind of indentured servitude. The Bible does not question the institution of slavery, but sets certain limits on it. And as one can see in the subsequent laws, the slave retains basic human rights. But they've just left Egypt, where we view them as slaves. Remember also, the Egyptians are not criticized for having slaves either, but rather for the way they treat the slaves. They degraded them. They made them serve with harshness. They made their lives bitter with hard work. They brought them down. The Torah did not bring about the end of slavery by abolishing it. It established principles regarding slaves' dignity, rights, and treatment. We view biblical slavery with our moral view, which has changed because of the evolution of these principles of freedom. Now, the most important holiday in the Torah is the festival of unleavened bread, otherwise known as Passover, the holiday of freedom from slavery, with a strict rule to tell the story of your freedom in every generation. It is about how you are enslaved and how you enslave others. As the poet said, how do you sleep? How do you sleep at night? Friends, you will notice that in the Torah, gradually, it contributes to humans' own rejection of slavery, in much, though not yet all, of the world. And this is a crucial point itself. Some of the laws of the Torah command things outright, while others lead humans to grow and change themselves. Now, God demonstrated the need for humanity to be free. Humanity has been a little slow to adapt and accept it. And while this is a dry legal sense and series of judgments, it still contains incredible gems that I want to point out. There are laws set out to protect widows and orphans. They talk about slavery, while bad, you must strive to be free, doesn't take away your ability to own people, but if you do, you treat them with dignity. You are not to follow a group, a crowd, a majority if what they do is wrong. Sigmund Freud wrote an incredible piece on the mob mentality. And there is a law based on compassion and empathy. One must be of help, even to someone who bears one ill will. Perhaps especially to someone who bears ill will. Friends, strip away the layers and see these are the codes of civilization. And right after the mention of slaves comes this fantastic anticipation in Exodus 21:13. He who strikes a man and he dies is doomed to die. And he who did not plot it, but God made it befall him, I shall set apart for you a place to which he may flee. Sanctuary, my friends. It began as towns set up specifically for that purpose and ultimately became places of worship. What is sanctuary? Just look at the word. Its original meaning is a sacred place, a safe haven. What an idea! These places of sanctuary were designed for people who have committed involuntary manslaughter as protection from vendetta justice, from the members of the family bent on what the Torah refers to as redeeming the blood, ge'ulat hadam, of their dead kinsmen. So if the killing was unintended, it would not be permitted to penetrate these towns of refuge and kill the perpetrator. Now eventually, The state took over all functions of executing justice, and these provisions became anachronistic. And after all this amazing insight into humanity, we see compassion and understanding, mercy and kindness, and it is juxtaposed in Exodus 21:24 with the first mention of the lex talionis, the questionable and perhaps archaic law of retaliation. And if there is a mishap, you shall pay a life for a life, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a hand for a hand, a foot for a foot, a burn for a burn, a wound for a wound, and a bruise for a bruise. Friends, it is no secret the pitiless punishment by equivalent injury of this famous lex talionis has created much discomfort and elicited tracts of commentary, and I will leave you to read them on your own. What a beginning. These are the judgments. After the 10 divine imperatives, couched in absolute terms and addressed to each Israelite in the second person singular, we have a series of miscellaneous laws formulated on hypothetical cases. Should a man do X, then? Where does this come from? How do you reconcile a series of laws that push the boundaries of humanity while dealing with the cruelty of barbarism? Friends, the Torah is not told in absolutes, and we are to reinterpret it in our times. Just look at what was acceptable and what wasn't. The vigorous beating of slaves, male and female alike, was assumed to be an acceptable practice. The essence of these laws was not about the beating of your slaves. It was about how the slave died from the beating. If the slave lasted a couple of days and then died, the inference would be that the master had not intended the death, but had merely overdone the beating. If the slave died on the spot, this would be evidence that the master had meant to kill him, or at least was guilty of voluntary manslaughter. Now, in today's day, this is simply not acceptable. And people still have a hard time reconciling a nation who just made a covenant on the basis that they were freed from slavery with so many rules regarding slaves. It can be difficult removing a 21st century look in the rearview mirror. And many have expected more of a Spartacus, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last view of things. But friends, the lesson and rules were for the people of the time. And we have progressed from here, or at least I hope we have. And lost in these rules come laws protecting the people. You shall not cheat a sojourner. You shall not oppress him. For you were sojourners in the land of Egypt. No widow or orphan shall you abuse. And this is something that will be emphasized again and again in the Torah. If you should lend money to my people, to the pauper among you, you shall not be to him like a creditor. You shall not impose interest on him. If you should indeed take in pledge of your fellow man's cloak, before the sun comes down, you shall return it to him, for it is his sole covering. It is his cloak for his skin. In what can he lie? Throughout biblical literature, these are the classic cases of powerless members of society who are vulnerable to exploitation. Exodus 23:9. You shall not oppress an alien, since you know the alien's soul, because you were aliens in the land of Egypt. Look how powerful a statement that is. You know the alien's soul. You know the feeling. No other law is given like this. You can empathize. What a concept. How many of us truly empathize with another? Friends, the conditions of our lives affect our expectations, and the definitions of our words affect our conditions. Change the expectations and change the conditions. Change the definitions. The Torah is a living organic entity which changes in each generation. And this parsha has the nucleus of rules and laws about soul elevation, which have changed over time. And some of my favorites are Exodus 22:30. And you shall be a holy people to me, and you shall not eat meat in the field that is torn. You shall throw it to the dog, meat that is torn. Now there always was, and always will be, a sacredness to food, especially the food we eat, and we have lost touch with that sacredness. This, of course, refers to the meat of an animal that was killed by another animal, rather than having been killed in the sacred manner prescribed by law. And friends, the word for torn, treif, later came to be used for any prohibited foods. Distill these laws down, my friends. The undercurrent throughout is humanity, dignity, decency. Exodus 23:8. No bribe shall you take, for a bribe blinds the sighted and perverts the words of the innocent. No sojourner shall you oppress, for you know the sojourner's heart, since you were sojourners in the land of Egypt. 6 years you shall sow your land and gather its produce, but in the seventh you shall let it go, and let it lie fallow, and your peoples indigent may eat of it, and what is left the beasts of the field will eat. Thus shall you do for your vineyard and your olive grove. It is about honor. No bribes, no oppression. We were oppressed. A ceasing or Sabbath for the land allows it to regenerate like we are to regenerate. And of course, the motive for the sabbatical year is a partial redressing of social inequity, linking it with the immediately preceding laws. The ecological advantage of allowing fields to lie fallow is not mentioned and does not have to be. The fact that there will be indigent is understood, but it allows them survival. If you apply these principles to everything in life, how far can you go wrong? Friends, these laws, these rules, these dictates sets up a sense of the concept of equality before the law and equity in social behavior, regardless of social standing or condition. And so we know what is expected. And God calls on 3 festivals to be observed. And of course, we learn much more about them later, but they are the ones honored to this day for these 3,000 plus years. 3 times in the year shall you hold me a festival. The festival of unleavened bread you shall keep 7 days. You shall eat unleavened bread as I have charged you at the fixed time of the month of the new grain, Abib, for in it you came out of Egypt. And they shall not appear in my presence empty-handed, and the festival of the harvest, first fruits of your labor that you sow in the field, and the festival of ingathering as the year goes out, when you gather in your labor from the fields. 3 times in the year all your males shall appear in the presence of the Master the Lord. You shall not offer up the blood of my sacrifice with leavened stuff, nor shall the fat of my festival offering be left till the morning. The best of the first fruit of your soil you shall bring in the house of the Lord your God. You shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk. The festival of unleavened bread, Passover, would be in April. The harvest, Shavuot, of first fruits would occur in late May or early June, and the ingathering, Sukkot, the harvest of most later crops, in late September or early October. But of course, the one line that has caused the greatest confusion was the one about the boiling a kid in its mother's milk. Taken as the rabbinic kashrut rule regarding mixing milk and meat, but meant in a moral way regarding both animal family slaughter and the idea of the mixture of the mother animal's nurturing milk with the slaughtered flesh of her offspring. And that becomes a promiscuous joining of life and death, and takes away from the emphasis on the sacredness of food and of life. And then in Exodus 24:8, we have one of the strangest yet most powerful images in the Torah, my friends. And Moses took the blood and threw it upon the people, and he said, look, the blood of the covenant that the Lord has sealed with you over all these words. Splashing blood on the altar is a standard sacrificial procedure. Throwing blood on the people is unique to this episode alone. Now, some modern commentators claim that the blood is thrown on the pillars that represent the 12 tribes. But such a notion undercuts the primal, archaic power of the rite. The covenantal rite of casting blood on the people is a climax of the various occurrences of blood in this narrative from the bridegroom of blood episode onward. The blood of circumcision that deflected the threat of death to Moses or his child, and the blood of the lamb that warded off the destroyer in Egypt, reappear here as the blood of the sacrifice that confirms Israel's everlasting bond with God. And almost lost in the list of judgments is an image of God and his location, my friends. And Moses went up, and with him Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel. And they saw the God of Israel. And beneath his feet was like a fashioning of sapphire pavement, like the very heavens for pureness. And the Lord said to Moses, go up to me, to the mountain, and be there, that I may give you the stone tablets and the teaching, and the commandments that I have written, to instruct them. And Moses arose, and Joshua was attendant with him, and Moses went up the mountain of God. And Moses went up, and the cloud covered the mountain, and the Lord's glory abode on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it 6 days. And on the seventh day he called out to Moses from the midst of the cloud, and the sight of the Lord's glory was like consuming fire at the mountaintop before the eyes of the Israelites. And Moses entered the cloud and went up the mountain, and Moses was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. And they saw the God of Israel. What a statement! The boldness with which this immediate vision is stated is startling, especially against the biblical background in which humans repeatedly fear that they cannot see God and live. A series of laws, of rules, of contractual obligation, and a picture of God standing in his celestial place. And beneath his feet was like a fashioning of sapphire pavement. Friends, we have the cloud, the glory, the fire, the trappings of God, where mere flesh and blood cannot sustain the vision of God. So the visual focus immediately slides down to the celestial brilliance beneath God's feet. And so the anthropomorphic vision of God continues, and God tells us what he is giving. The stone tablets, the teaching, the commandments that I have written. And to go with the covenant of laws, although the often repeated devarim, words, implies speech, dibur, the central event of the giving of the law places a strong and powerful stress on the act of writing as the vehicle for endowing words with permanence. And this is about the permanence of the law. And that fantastic ending to the parsha, my friends. And Moses entered within the cloud. As he does, the terrifying gap between Moses and the people is beautifully registered and provides an incredible parallel to Abraham and his going to the mountain to sacrifice Isaac, as these two stories connect the mountain where the greatest revelation takes place to the mountain where the divine promise was confirmed in the past, and where the temple will stand in the future, since the location of the temple is identified with the place of the binding of Isaac, Moriah. The two sacred mountains are connected. The patriarch and his descendants are connected. Past, present, future are connected, all in the embroidery of the Torah's wording. Remember, there is nothing you can know that isn't known, nothing you can see that isn't shown, nowhere you can be that isn't where you're meant to be. It's easy. All you need is love. Love is all you need. Love y'all, live free, be free, honor your freedom. Be well, be happy, be blessed. Share and honor the light in all who live in the light, and continue to shine. Continue to send everyone you know goodwill and love. Pray for peace and freedom for everyone, and end to terror and hatred. Have a fantastic Valentine's Day. And remember, friends, we are a community. Oh, there go the dogs. We learn together. We celebrate each other. Love each other. Thank you. See you all next time. Bless you all. Shabbat Shalom.